Welcome to Pink Blade. Here, we don't just watch stories, we step inside them. Today, we're diving deep into Bridgerton Season 4, Episode 1. It feels like we've been holding our breath for an eternity, doesn't it? The off-season was so long, the speculation was just intense.
Oh, totally. But the wait is finally over.
We are stepping back into the ton, and maybe more importantly, we're finally stepping into Benedict Bridgerton's story.
Yes. The artist, the eternal bachelor.
The man who has spent 3 seasons just sort of floating on the periphery is now center stage.
And honestly, it feels like a completely different show.
Mm-hmm.
This premiere, The Waltz, it's not just a continuation. It feels like a soft reboot of the whole Bridgerton energy.
A soft reboot. I like that.
We've spent years with the slow burn, the friends to lovers thing with Colin and Penelope.
Yeah.
This is immediate. It's visceral. It's magical.
It really is. And our mission today is to unpack exactly how they pulled off this vibe shift. We're going to look at how the show is reinventing itself by leaning into and then twisting the whole Cinderella trope.
And that new upstairs-downstairs dynamic, which I think is the biggest narrative risk they've taken so far.
Oh, for sure. And for my fellow film nerds, we are going to break down the optical engineering required to light that masquerade ball. Because, spoiler alert, achieving that specific moonlight look required technology that arguably shouldn't even exist on a period set.
It's a fascinating mix, right? 19th century aesthetics and 21st century tech. But before we get to the LED rigs, we have to ground ourselves in the narrative stakes. It's 1813, but the board has been completely reset.
It really has. The power dynamics in Bridgerton House feel totally different.
Right off the bat, you feel the absence of Anthony and Kate.
Yes. Our Viscount and Viscountess are in India. We get the lovely news that they have a son, so the lineage is secure. But them not being there just creates this massive vacuum. The steady hand is gone.
And look who's left holding the reins. Benedict.
Poor Benedict.
He's technically in charge of the estate, trying to fill Anthony's shoes, and it's just painful to watch. He is drowning in ledgers and tenant disputes.
You can see it in his posture. He's usually so fluid and easy, but here he's all stiff and agitated. He's putting on a performance of a Viscount, and he knows he's bombing.
He literally calls himself number 2 later in the episode. He's internalized that spare mentality so deeply.
And while he's flailing, the rest of the family is in this weird transitional state. The Scottish contingent, Eloise, Francesca, John Sterling, they're back. And Eloise. I am obsessed with her energy this season.
Oh, me too. She's stopped fighting, hasn't she? In previous seasons, Eloise was constantly raging against the machine.
Constantly.
Now she's just stepped off the conveyor belt. She's embracing spinsterhood, not as a failure, but as a relief.
Which is such a sharp contrast to Hyacinth. Did you catch that detail about her hems?
Yes, she's begging to have them lowered. She is clawing at the gates to get into the marriage market, just as Eloise is settling out of it.
It creates this generational pincer movement that just squeezes Benedict from both sides. The older generation is gone, the younger generation is pushing up, and he's just stuck.
Yeah.
Paralyzed.
But the pressure inside the drawing room is nothing compared to the shift we're seeing in the service quarters. This is that upstairs-downstairs element.
Right. In seasons 1 through 3, the servants were, they were largely invisible. They were there to hand over a lemonade or deliver a whistle-down pamphlet.
Or offer a bit of comic relief, maybe.
Yeah.
But this premiere flips the camera 180 degrees. We are suddenly looking at the labor. We see the maid wars erupting because the Penwood family fires a maid, and it ripples through the entire staff network of the ton.
It's not just gossip, it's economic survival.
That is the key difference. For the Bridgertons, a scandal means a bad season. For the servants, a scandal means starvation. And that context is so crucial for understanding Sophie Bake. She isn't just a maid in the abstract, she's a worker in this really volatile market.
The show establishes that class divide immediately. The balls, the clamor, it all requires sweat and panic to even happen.
And speaking of the Penwoods, we have our villains. And they are visually striking.
Lady Ermentegund is wearing black.
That stood out immediately. We're used to the Featheringtons in their citrusy acidic colors, or the Bridgertons in their soft pastels. Black signals severity. It signals a mourning that's just curdled into bitterness.
And she's brought her daughters, Rosamund and Posy. Rosamund is the evil stepsister archetype, just mean-spirited and entitled.
And Posy is sweet, but completely under her mother's thumb.
And then there's Sophie, the illegitimate daughter turned maid. It's the classic Cinderella setup, right? But what I appreciate is that the show doesn't Disney-fy her reality. Her life looks hard. Her hands look worked.
Which brings us to the collision course. You've got Benedict, who feels like an imposter in his own high society life. He's partying too hard, sleeping around.
Just trying to numb the anxiety of being the spare in charge.
And then the queen makes it worse.
The queen is bored. She is so tired of picking a diamond. She's done with debutantes curtsying. She wants to hunt.
So she announces she's looking for a suitor of the season.
It's a brilliant narrative pivot. Usually, the women are the objects of scrutiny. Now, the queen turns the lens on the men. She puts Benedict squarely in the crosshairs.
And he goes from being the observer, the artist on the sidelines, to being the observed. And he hates it.
Which is why this episode works so well as a hook. We are shifting from that intellectual, slow-burn connection of friends to lovers to the lightning strike of love at first sight.
It breaks the formula. Benedict is usually the one exploring, keeping his options open. Now he's the one who's captivated. Instantly.
And the Masquerade Ball is the perfect catalyst for this. The theme is midnight in a woodland forest, inspired by A Midsummer Night's Dream. It's lush, it's magical.
But narratively, the masks are doing all the heavy lifting.
Because everyone is hiding their face, they're actually revealing their true selves. It's the paradox of anonymity.
Exactly. Social standing is temporarily suspended. When Benedict meets Sophie, she is just the lady in silver. He doesn't know she's a maid. She doesn't care that he's a Bridgerton.
In fact, she's the first person in ages who treats him like a regular man, not a prize or a disappointment. It forces him to confront his whole lifestyle immediately.
It sets up the central question of the season right there in episode 1. Can a connection made in the dark survive the light of day?
Okay, let's get into the weeds of how they actually built this world. Because visually, this episode was a stunner, and I know you want to talk about that opening tracking shot.
Oh, it was masterful. It's a single shot that tells you everything about the new tone.
The camera follows Violet upstairs. Everything's calm, elegant, pastel, quiet. And then, bam, it dives downstairs into the kitchen.
And did you notice how the camera work changes? It goes handheld, it becomes kinetic, frantic, a little shaky. It unifies the two worlds geographically, but totally contrasts them energetically.
It shows us Mrs. Wilson and Footman John as essential gears in this machine.
They're not just background anymore.
Not at all. And I caught a detail from the set decorators that blew my mind. For those kitchen scenes, just to get the texture right in the background, they boiled 200 fresh eggs.
Get out. 200 eggs.
Yeah.
Just for background atmosphere.
Yes. They wanted them piled up, being peeled, being chopped. It adds this texture of volume and consumption. You don't get that sense of scale if you just see a dainty plate of food upstairs.
You need to see the mass production required to feed the fantasy. Wow. That's a small detail, but it sells that upstairs-downstairs reality better than any line of dialogue ever could.
It really does.
And speaking of resources, we promised to talk about the lighting of the Masquerade Ball. This is where the production team really flexed their muscles.
Right, because they were shooting in historic locations. And historic locations have one golden rule that drives filmmakers crazy.
No fire, no open flames, no hot lights.
Yeah.
You can't risk damaging the artwork or the architecture of these centuries-old estates.
So the cinematography team, led by Jeffrey Jur and Alicia Robbins, had a massive problem. How do you create the look of moonlight and candlelight without, well, fire and heat?
They used something called Aquabat LED lights. They did. They rigged these massive LED systems overhead. Now, here's the geeky part that matters. They set them to 10,000 Kelvin.
Okay, for the non-lighting nerds listening, walk us through that. What does 10,000 Kelvin actually look like to the human eye?
It is extremely blue, like deep, cold twilight blue. If you saw it in real life, it would look almost alien. But on camera, it mimics a very cold moonlit night. But if you just blast blue light, it looks fake, like a bad stage play. So they combined it with balloon lights to create a soft ambient glow that fills in all the shadows.
And they paired that with the Sony Venice cameras, right? I read they were shooting at 2500 ISO.
Which is huge. Think of ISO as the camera's sensitivity to light. Most movies shoot at roughly 800. Shooting at 2500 is like giving the camera night vision. It allowed them to pick up the texture of the fabrics, the velvet, the silk, and the micro-expressions on the actors' faces.
Without blasting them with artificial stadium lighting, it allows for darkness to actually exist in the frame. That explains why the textures look so rich. It didn't look like a TV set, it looked like a Caravaggio painting. And speaking of textures, 172 custom looks, just for the ball.
It's a staggering number. But the costumes are telling a story too.
Let's break down the key looks. Benedict. The costume designer said they wanted a Shakespeare in Love or Hamlet vibe.
Dark teals, open collars. It's the sexy Bridgerton man look, moving away from the buttoned-up stiff collars of the previous seasons. It signals he's an artist, a romantic, he's looser, he's ready to fall.
And Violet was dressed as Titania, Queen of the Fairies, which feels like a massive flashing sign.
Oh, absolutely. Titania is soft,
Yeah.
romantic, magical. It suggests Violet herself is open to love this season, mirroring her son's journey. She's not just the matriarch anymore. She's a woman entering a forest of her own.
But the showstopper is the Lady in Silver, Sophie's dress. It's Italian silver lame with Swarovski crystals, but the detail I loved is that the designers explicitly wanted it to look like a found dress.
Right. It's not supposed to look like she just walked out of the modiste on Bond Street. It's repurposed from her grandmother's trousseau. It has history. It looks slightly out of time, which just adds to her mystery.
She looks like she stepped out of a fable, not a catalog.
Exactly.
And we can't talk about the vibe without talking about the music. The instrumental pop covers are the heartbeat of this show, and they really leaned into the nostalgia this time.
They did. We had Life in Technicolor by Coldplay setting the scene, and DJ Got Us Fallen in Love by Usher for the high energy of the dance floor.
But the one that landed for me, and I know I'm not alone here, was Never Let You Go by Third Eye Blind.
That was such a specific choice to target the audience's emotional memory. The showrunners choose these songs to trigger a subconscious emotional recognition in us, the modern viewers. You hear that melody, and you feel the nostalgia of your own past, and you project that feeling onto the characters.
It bridges the gap between 1813 and today. Let's pivot to the emotional core of the episode, the terrace dance lesson. This is the scene where all that tech, the blue light, the silver dress, the high ISO, it actually pays off. Benedict rescues Sophie from a boring suitor.
Yeah, Lord Napier.
The Lord Napier, right, and they retreat to the terrace.
This is where the dialogue really shines. They talk about shallow waters. Sophie reads him instantly. She tells him that he uses his charm and his questions to deflect so people don't see beneath the surface.
And Benedict admits it. He admits he feels like number two, the spare. It's surprisingly vulnerable for a first meeting. Why does he spill his guts to a stranger? He usually plays his cards so close to his chest.
It's the power of the mask again. Anonymity is a serum. He feels safe to admit his insecurity because he thinks he'll never see her again. There are no consequences.
And Sophie, despite her lower status, holds all the power in the conversation because she sees him so clearly. She strips him down faster than anyone else has in 4 seasons.
And then the physical intimacy ramps up. Benedict teaching her the waltz because she doesn't know it, the hand placement, the closeness.
It's intimate, but it's also instructive. He is bringing her into his world, physically, even as she is mentally pulling him out of his.
It's a literal and metaphorical dance of equals, which just shouldn't be possible, given their stations.
And then the kiss at midnight. The clock strikes 12, the spell breaks, she runs, and she leaves a silver glove behind. It anchors the season's central mystery immediately.
It's classic folklore, but done with that specific Bridgerton gloss. It's the inciting incident that drives the rest of the plot.
Now, we have to look at how the humans behind the characters approach this. Luke Thompson, who plays Benedict, had a really interesting take on his character's growth in this episode.
Oh, yeah?
He noted that Benedict is usually fast-paced, always moving to the next attraction, the next party, the next lover. But that terrace scene forces him to stop, to be still.
And that stillness is where the chemistry lives. And Yeren Ha, who plays Sophie, talked about channeling imposter syndrome, which is so meta.
Well, it really is.
She felt intimidated joining this massive global phenomenon, entering the Bridgerton machine. And she used that real-life anxiety to fuel Sophie, who is literally an imposter at the ball.
It grounds the performance in real emotion. Showrunner Just Brown mentioned that the theme of the season is courage. Benedict needs the courage to commit, to stop floating, and Sophie needs the courage to dream of a life beyond servitude.
And looking at the style, costume designer John Glazer described the season's look as Gucci-fied Regency, with 1980s new romantic influences. Think Adam Ant or Prince.
Gucci-fied Regency. I love that. But that actually leads us to the fan reaction, doesn't it? Because that aesthetic choice isn't for everyone.
It is not. There's a bit of a costume controversy brewing online. Some fans feel the masks and the fabrics look too modern. I've seen comparisons to an 80s prom floating around the forums.
I saw the acrylic nails discourse on social media. People are zooming in on every single frame, scrutinizing the styling.
It's the risk you take with a stylistic choice like that. For some, it enhances the fantasy. It feels fresh and cool. For others, it breaks the immersion of the period.
But generally, the Benefit chemistry Benedict and Sophie has been overwhelmingly positive. Fans are dissecting the micro-expressions and the terrace gaze.
The eye acting is next level.
Yeah.
But there's a deeper debate happening about that upstairs-downstairs dynamic.
Right. On one hand, fans love seeing Footman John and Mrs. Wilson as real people. It fleshes out the world.
But on the other hand, some find the class divide uncomfortable. I mean, the Cinderella trope is a classic, but in our modern context, watching a power imbalance that steep is tricky. It raises questions about consent and agency that the show is going to have to navigate very carefully.
Which brings us to the thematic question this episode leaves us with. If we zoom out, what is the season really asking us to consider?
I think the core question is about the cost of visibility.
The cost of visibility. Okay, let's unpack that.
In a world governed by these strict class rules, visibility is dangerous. For Benedict, being the suitor of the season, makes him visible in a way he hates. He's exposed, judged, categorized.
And for Sophie?
For Sophie, being visible at the ball puts her livelihood, her literal survival, at risk. If she is seen, really seen, she loses everything.
So the question is, can a connection made in the dark, where they are invisible to society but visible to each other, survive the light of day?
Exactly. Benedict falls for a lady. But can he love a maid? The episode ends with this perfect dichotomy. Benedict is holding that silver glove, obsessed with a fantasy, looking up at the stars.
While Sophie is hiding the matching glove under her bed, trapped in her reality, looking at the floorboards.
It sets the stakes perfectly. It's not just about will they or won't they. It's about can they.
Can they dismantle the world enough to fit each other in it? That's the real question.
And if this episode is any indication, watching them try is going to be incredible.
Thanks for listening to Pink Blade. If this episode revealed something new, you can follow to explore the next chapter. And if a moment stayed with you, share it in the comments. Until next time, this is Pink Blade.